It's Friday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand, happy to be back for another day, and I hope everybody's having a great day out there as well. Tremendous show coming up today. A couple different guests from the Star Tribune. Cassidy Hettesheimer will join me here in just a few minutes. She wrote an interesting story about Elk River football, the type of offense they run, and how it not only fools defenses because of kind of the triple threat running back grouping they have out there, but it often fools the person operating the camera and trying to follow the ball. I admit, watching highlights of them, I had a hard time figuring out where the ball was, and that was, upon replay. So I imagine in real time it is even harder for defenses and camera people to diagnose exactly who is getting the ball. So Cassidy and I will talk about that here in just a little bit and the success that Elk River has had with this system. Ryan Kostecka, the sports editor at the Star Tribune, will join me after that to talk a little fantasy football. We're going to try a weekly segment this week, just kind of introducing it. Weeks going forward, we'll have a little fun, a little competition. We'll get you ready for the fantasy sports weekend in football. So stick around for that as well. Big weekend in sports for Vikings, Lynx. Get to that at the end of the show, as well as a scary moment from Monday Night Football last night. First, though, what did I miss? I got to start with the Twins, even though they didn't play. Didn't anticipate going into this day talking Twins off the jump, just because they were off Thursday. Didn't figure much was going to happen. Two things changed my mind. First, practical thing. Everybody that's chasing them in the AL wildcard race lost yesterday while the Twins were off. Mariners lost. Red Sox lost. Tigers lost. So the Twins now 3.5 up on Detroit, 4.5 up on Boston and Seattle. So that was some good news for them, even while they weren't playing, right? They gained some ground even while they were idle. Their playoff odds and Fangraphs up over 90% again. So a much needed kind of jolt as they kind of head down the home stretch here. Byron Buxton activated. He's back now. So maybe things are kind of steadying. They're getting themselves leveled a little bit for the final 2-3 weeks of the season. However, it was not a great story for the organization overall. One of the strangest, most interesting stories I've read in a while. I think ESPN maybe had this first. Twins released a minor league catcher, Derek Bender, somebody they just drafted earlier this summer. He was he was a 6th round pick out of Coastal Carolina, had been playing for the Class A team in Fort Myers. They released him because of what they say. This is sources saying that in the second game of a doubleheader, with basically the playoffs on the line, Fort Myers was going to be eliminated with a loss. He was tipping pitches to the opposing team, telling opposing hitters, basically giving them hints as to what pitches were going to be thrown by starting pitcher Ross Dunn. And again, this is all sources telling ESPN. Lakeland was the team they were playing against. They scored 4 runs in the second inning. They won 6-0. Fort Myers eliminated from playoff contention, and ESPN, according to sources, said Derek Bender, this catcher, had told people earlier that he wanted the season to be over. I've never heard of a story like this. Never heard of a player just maybe wanting the season to be over and orchestrating a loss to help that happen. I don't know what exactly happened here. Anything beyond what the facts of the story say would be speculating, but certainly going to be more to come on this story. I just can't believe this story. Now, it was reported too in the story, his signing bonus was almost $300,000 when he signed before he started playing, and it sounds like he's going to be able to keep all of that. So I don't know. I've never, it's such an unusual story. I've never heard of a story like this. I'm sure, again, more reporting will come out on this. I'm sure the Twins maybe will have to say something on the record about this at some point because, this is a 6th round pick. This isn't your top pick or anything like that, but that's, still a significant investment, a player that, a catcher in the organization, somebody they assuredly had, hopes for, whether they were high hopes. You never really know how someone's going to pan out when they get to the major league level, but you would not have imagined this was going to happen. And for them to release him as a result of whatever was going on here. That says a lot about the situation. So interested to learn more about this in the coming days. But man, what a story, and not the one the Twins probably wanted to hear coming out of an off day on Thursday. Like I said at the jump today, going to talk a little high school football on today's show with Cassidy Hettesheimer, our newest full-time Star Tribune writer. She was here as an intern this summer, now hired full-time as the Star Tribune's latest high school sports writer. She's been hitting the ground running, writing about a whole bunch of stuff, and the story about Elk River's football team and their offense caught my ear and eye earlier this week as we were kind of talking about the planning of the week. So I thought I'd have her on the show to explain it a little bit better. Also did this segment as a video if you want to see the kind of this offense in action, some video clips, some highlights of that in the video that Cassidy and I did on the Star Tribune's YouTube page. Check that out. If you want to, again, if you want to see what this offense looks like, again, watching those two clips that you'll see on the highlight, I couldn't tell where the ball was going, so I imagine it's hard for defenses to know as well. Great to be joined today by newest, although you've been around for a little while as an intern, Star Tribune employee, Star Tribune sports writer, Cassidy Hettesheimer. How you doing, Cassidy?
I'm pretty good, settling in. Second week back here full time, so it's been fun getting in the swing of things.
Putting you right to work on the high school beat. I mean, you get here and it's basically full speed ahead because this is the hard time, the fast time, the busy time for high school sports. I know it very well. I covered a lot of preps back in the day. I was actually the preps team leader for 5 years in a previous life here at the Star Tribune. But so I know how hard it is to cover everything this time of year and to sometimes find unique stories because everything's kind of coming out like a fire hose right now and everything's just, cover this, cover that. But you found a cool story about Elk River football, and I wanted you to tell me a little bit more about the offense they are running at Elk River.
Yeah. So, even though, the story's coming out now, this offense they're running isn't necessarily new. They have a very, run-heavy offense. Power T is the name. And this was something that I was learning a lot about, as I was working on this story. It's not a particular offensive scheme I had really covered before or watched even a lot of. But Coach Steve Hamilton brought it in to Elk River when he took over the program in 2011. They had been coming off a winless season in 2010 and was able to implement it and help them win, I believe, 2 state championships since then, the most recent being 2022, and have a lot of success on that front. And it's this very shifty offense that's interesting to watch. And as someone who, is new to the area, new to the state, and just in general Minnesota high school football, it was something that I think the watching experience really caught my eye because ahead of the game I was watching some clips and highlights online of the offense and kind of kept thinking like, oh, it's so odd that the camera operators are, they'll be focused on one player.
Right.
And they have the quarterback and 3 running backs lined up behind the offensive line. And, they'll follow one running back and in the middle of the highlight, it's like it'll shift and kind of you'll realize that the camera operator was just as tricked as the defense was for the other team. So, yeah, it was fun to kind of go and write about it from the experience of, not just why is it hard to play against, but like why is it hard to watch? Not hard in a negative sense, but hard in a way that is probably a good sign for Elk River.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's interesting. Like, how do they describe it? Because it looks a little bit like like a triple option, but it also looks like kind of like the wing T. Is it kind of like marrying those two things up, essentially?
Yeah, I think when we were talking about it in the newsroom, I think that the comparisons to those things were brought up. I think when I was talking to the coach, both Steve Hamilton after the game, and then reading up on previous things that I believe Jim Paulson on the Preps beat had written about it. Just it was kind of coming up how important it is in this style of offense to have just like a very disciplined offensive line, and how the blocking and the sort of trickery of it can come down to a difference between like a 4-inch step versus a 6-inch step. It's not only beneficial to have, an explosive quarterback and good running backs, but also like having a line that's going to be able to give them, viable paths that
Sure.
lean into that trickery. So it was kind of interesting, like learning about the necessities behind it. And like players talking to him, they're kind of saying like, you see the end zone, you're seeing the back of the end zone like before anybody else. And it's kind of like you break free and it's kind of an automatic touchdown. I think through their first 2 games, they've averaged is like over 490 rushing yards. I believe both games attempted 2 passes. So it's definitely like a very,
yeah, it's old school. Yeah.
Yeah. One of those passes in last Friday's 50-14 win over Brainerd was a passing touchdown.
There you go.
So, that they've got that option as well. But yeah, like run heavy, just putting up some massive rushing yards.
Yeah, and those highlights were from that Brainerd game. Does the quarterback ever get to run it, or he would get bored? I would think
he does.
Good.
I believe he had 2 rushing. He might have had a passing and rushing against Brainerd, but he definitely had a pretty long rushing touchdown. But yeah, he has some good yards on the ground as well.
Okay. Well, what's the outlook for them this year? Are they feeling pretty good about being a contender again? What's up next for Elk River?
Yeah, I think that just being out there at the game, every team's going to, want to be at, US Bank Stadium at the end of the year. But I think that this Elks team, is feeling very confident. They knocked off, two pretty good teams in their first 2 games.
Yeah.
And I think that they kind of the sentiment was that they have a more experienced group. And that's what a lot of this scheme kind of comes down to is like discipline and knowing sort of this, the options that they have and when to break out of it and when to lean into it. I know Hamilton and I talked with Brecken and then Gavin Schmidt after the game, and they were all feeling pretty confident. So I think that this is going to be a team that we're going to see, roll pretty deep into playoffs and really want to be there at US Bank and back to their, state championship contending ways of 2022. So.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, Cassidy, appreciate it. What are you working on next? You've been working on a few things already. What's next for you?
Yeah, working on some, getting into the thick of some volleyball and soccer coverage, kind of through the, latter half of those seasons, and into playoffs, and then doing some stuff on flag football, kind of the state of that in the state. So I've been out to a couple different places, talking to some different people. So that's been super cool. So yeah, just kind of jumping in and covering everything everywhere. I'll be at Lakeville North versus Lakeville South tomorrow, or this Friday, I should say. And yeah, just kind of everything and anything where I'm needed in prep sports world right now.
Awesome. Well, you're doing a great job so far. Good story. Appreciate you talking to me, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks again to Cassidy. Again, go check out the story, startribune.com, and also, like I said, the video of our segment with highlights from Elk River's most recent win over Brainerd, kind of showcasing what this offense looks like in action. You can find that on the Star Tribune's YouTube page. You might have noticed we're experimenting with a few different things here on Daily Delivery, trying out some new segments. We're going to try some fantasy football this season. Ryan Kostecka, Star Tribune sports editor, brought it to my attention. I was like, that's a pretty good idea. Let's give it a try, see how it goes, see if people are into the fantasy football, into what we have to say about it. So we're going to do that for the rest of the year. Give it a try, see how it goes. Most weeks we're going to compete against each other. We're going to pick a few players, see how it all shakes out, kind of, and then recap that the following week. This week we just kind of set the stage for it. So here I am with Ryan Kostecka, our Star Tribune sports editor. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy to be here. Happy to talk fantasy football.
Now, we're going to get into some more competitive stuff in future weeks. I think we've decided on kind of a vague format where we're each going to pick a few guys and kind of go head to head each week. And I want to pick an NFC North guy each week. That'll probably start next week. This week, I want to hear from you. Why do you play? Why do you enjoy fantasy football?
I mean, I think those are two different answers. I'll start with the first one. I play fantasy football. I used to play a lot. It was a way to stay connected with family, from all over the country. But I went away from it just because it was, when you're playing with family, it can get a little heated sometimes, a little contentious, as you can imagine. So stayed away from that. And then I just moved here, as you know, from Utah. And all my buddies who I play slow pitch softball with, we play every Thursday night. They have a league. So now I joined their league as a way to stay in contact with them. We talk a lot more now. It's nice to feel like you're still part of this group, this family that you spent years kind of curating and just joining.
So why do you like what do you like about fantasy football itself? I mean, you seem like you're a football fan, obviously.
Yeah, big football fan. I mean, go Chargers always. But I like fantasy football. I like the competitive nature of it. And it's a way to. It's not so much the football as much as it's a way to like beat your friends. So it's like, oh, I'm smarter than you. Essentially, it's all it really is. Like I drafted this guy because I'm smarter than you, or it's easy to draft the best players, but when you find like that diamond in the rough because you had a gut feeling maybe, or just because that's who was available and you just took a chance. But like finding those and having bragging rights over your friends, that's like why we play. But it's what I love playing about it. But it adds it's kind of twofold. It adds the excitement of watching on Thursdays and Sundays and Mondays. You're excited more. You're way more into the games, which is awesome. But the flip side of that is, man, it was about the first half of the first games on Sundays, and I was already like, do I regret this? Because I am just like freaking out, panicking. It was nuts.
Do you have McCaffrey? Do you have Christian McCaffrey?
You would bring that up right away, wouldn't you? Oh.
I thought you said you did. So
I did. It was and here's the thing. I agonized over that pick.
Right.
Between him and Breece Hall. I agonized over it, and I was like, I even talked to my buddies, and they were like separate friends from this league, and they're like, dude, you got to take him. Like, I don't know, man, this calf injury. It might not, what if it's not a calf injury? I mean, we know enough, watching the game and following along that for someone like him, a calf injury is a big deal. And they're like, no, you got to do it. You'll regret it. My dad, who's a Niner fan, said you'll regret it. And, I regret it. Or you regret it if you didn't take him. Yeah. And, well, I kind of regret – I kind of regret taking him right now, but, like, he's not going on IR from what I've heard, so I think I'll be okay, but it hurts.
He says he's playing this week against the Vikings. Now, I don't know if he really is.
He really?
Not, but he's saying that. Now, the report earlier this week from the national guys was like kind of doubtful that McCaffrey's playing. So I don't know. It's
right.
It's mysterious, which is the worst kind of injury,
yes.
right? Like if someone's out like 4 weeks, then you could just be like, okay, I got to get I got to play somebody else for 4 weeks. Not the end of the world, not perfect, but you got to get. If you got these game time decisions every Sunday, that's where it drives you crazy.
And that was a Monday decision too. I mean, it's like
that's right.
You're at that point, you have no choice. You really don't. I was lucky; I still won, so that was nice. I mean, we can get to it later, but I had Anthony Richardson had a big day for me. Mike Evans and Cooper Kupp. Having Cooper back is that was nice. I'm proud of that one.
Did you scoop up the backup that went nuts?
Once again, that's another point of contention for me.
I didn't know this was a source. I didn't know this was. I didn't know that.
Oh, it's a thing.
I didn't know that was a source. Okay, what happened?
My buddy has him, and as we're going in the draft, Mason was still available, right? And it was a snake draft, so it was the number one. I'm like, I'm good, and it was coming back down to me, and I'm like, I'm good. I'm looking to see what they got, and my buddy who I was playing against actually with the second pick, he had like 3 or 4 running backs already on his roster. So I'm like, let's go. I'm gonna get my my safety valve. I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah.
And what does this guy do? He takes him. He's got 17 running backs. Like, are you kidding me? Come on, man. And so he took him, and so I am now left. I benched McCaffrey because I don't believe he's playing. I have Tank Bigsby going this week for me. So, come on, Jacksonville, give him the goal line carries, please.
Oh my gosh, that's rough, and that's part of the fun, right? Like he probably did it because it's a good pick. He probably did it because he knew it was going to bother you, right?
Oh, 100%. 100%. And here's the thing: the absolute second the draft ended, I get a text from him, and it's like, "So you want Jordan Mason?" That was literally, and I didn't respond. I was so mad. I didn't even respond to him at that point. I was like, oh my, I was so mad. I responded back to him. I said, no, because Christian's going to be fine. And, sure enough, I was wrong. But, besides the point.
Well, as long as he's healthy for the fantasy playoffs, stuff like that, you'll be okay. And you still won week 1. Did you play against? Did you say you play against him in week 1 and you still beat him?
Yeah. So that same guy, I played against him in week 1, and he had Breece Hall, who he took number 2.
Well, so there you go. There you go. You can still beat him. So it's all
matters.
It's all good. So yeah, Anthony Richardson, that's a good pick. I was that guy this year. So I play in one league right now, just for fun league with a bunch of college friends. And we've had this league going for like almost 30 years. And like back back before kids, like right out of college, but before kids, like when we started to like disperse a little bit, like some of us were, out of state, things like that. We weren't all in college anymore. Like we would all like meet up someplace for our draft. Like, and this was like an analog draft at this point.
Like the whiteboard and stuff.
Whiteboard or like writing down the names. Cause this is like, late 90s. Like you don't have just like secure internet. Like we went to Vegas 3 times, I think, for the draft. We were like, this was a big deal. Went to Wisconsin one time because we had a couple people in Wisconsin. Went to Philly one time just because we had a couple people out on the East Coast. This is this is again before kids, before everybody kind of settled down. We've been more online about it lately, but this has been going for like almost 30 years, like legendary stuff. And I'm the guy this year. I'm the guy this year that overslept the draft because we've been at the fair the night before till like 11 p.m. We get home, like I don't get to bed till like 1 p.m. I'm like, listen, one of the kids is going to be up. I don't need to set an alarm. Like it's the one time that like everybody sleeps. I wake up, it's like 9:45, and our draft was at 8:30 because we got time zone things. We got a couple people in Europe, so we got like time zone considerations, stuff like that. Draft was at 8:30, and it was quick. It was over by 10. I missed the whole thing, and I was like, so I look at my auto draft, and I've got like 8 wide receivers. It's because like auto draft is like. Auto draft tries, but it's not picky about like overloading. So I've got like 8 wide receivers, 3 or 4 running backs, and then 1 each of like a quarterback, a tight end, and a defense and a kicker. It's like it's fine. I lost week 1. I deserved it. I gotta hit the waiver wire, but I was that guy this year, and I felt really bad about it.
Every draft has that guy. But I mean, hopefully for you for the auto draft though, like because you can set it to where it's like the auto draft right away. Yeah, we had a guy who didn't auto draft and wasn't there. Didn't put so every time. So we had to wait the full minute every single time for his pick, and it was the absolute worst. Like there's always that guy. I mean, there's a punishment for Lou getting last place, which they haven't told me yet. So I'm sure I'm going to figure that out and find that out. But I do think that if you're the auto draft guy where you like, I don't mind your auto draft where it's like happens right away, keeps it going, that's fine. But if you're the guy you wait for a minute, you always select like at the very end, man, you get a punishment too. You're the worst. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah. Like our drafts, but back when they were like offline, they used to take like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 hours. Right. You got like write everything down. We had, I remember doing one like over like a conference call when we couldn't like get everybody together, like an actual, like, but not like a video call, like a conference call. We're like huddled in this like office and like everyone's like saying their picks. These things took forever, but they were fun. Like everybody's ripping on each other. I still remember 98 when one of the guys in our league took Randy Moss in the first round. We're all like, come on, Randy Moss, like he's a rookie. You don't need to take him this early. And he ends up going for like 17 touchdowns that year and ended up being a pick.
Gosh.
So, so there's memorable moments in this league. So I feel like that guy this year. I gotta rectify things, but it's fun, right? It's still fun. I wondered at a certain point if fantasy was going to kind of go away with the proliferation of daily fantasy, with more proliferation of sports betting, things like that. But it still feels like it's got its own niche.
It does. I think it definitely has its own niche. I think it has the benefit of, in a sense, like being first. Of like the real big fantasy concept of things, and I think people love that nostalgia. And I think what the difference is, like, it's the same reason why you and your boys play, why me and my friends are playing too. It keeps you together. Like the daily stuff, it's, you're kind of just doing it on your own. You don't really need anyone specifically. But this, it keeps you together, it keeps you engaged. And as you know, we have kids. Granted, I'm like the oldest person in my fantasy group at 34. But like people have kids. You have wives, you have lives, you're traveling, you have work, you have all this stuff. This is a way to stay close to your group, your core group of friends. And I think that's why it's kind of lived on. I think in a sense why it's even, expanded so much more. I love it. I'm so happy back playing it, which is great. I had a college one for my college sports desk. We had one as well. I'll never forget taking home that championship. That was always it's a big time. I'm very happy with that. It's one of my real high moments in my sports career, you could say.
Well, yeah, in our group, we're a lot of sports journalists, because this was like, a lot of people I knew from the college paper at University of Minnesota. And like, so we would like we would like collaborate on like a weekly column that was only distributed between the 10 of us, like just ripping on each other, trash talk, like in this whole note style column. It's we haven't done enough of it lately. Like you said, everybody's busy. Everybody's kind of like, we got to hold this together. So we all kind of still have this bond. It's not quite the same as it used to be, but you got to hold it together, and hopefully not be auto draft guy, not be that guy who's ruining it for everybody. So, well, like I said, we're going to do this every week, probably on Fridays. We won't get the Thursday games into it, but that's just kind of the way that things go.
Yeah.
What we're going to do is you and I are each going to pick three players: a quarterback, a tight end, quarterback, a running back, and a wide receiver. And it's got to be someone ranked outside the top 10 in that week's projection. So it's got to be like somewhat of a sleeper. We're not going to pick like the worst of the worst. Nobody's going to pick Daniel Jones. Okay, nobody's going to pick Daniel Jones. But yeah, but you're going to have to get a little creative. You can't just like be like, I want Patrick Mahomes and so and so and so and so every week. So we'll do that every week, and we'll pick an NFC North fantasy player of the week. Maybe get some Vikings involved in that, and we'll see how we do, and we'll see how everybody enjoys it. Everybody can chime in if you guys want to make your own picks. That's great. We'll compare them all, stuff like that. But that's my plan for right now.
I love to be told when I'm wrong. People are going to disagree, and I love that. Tell me when I'm wrong.
Tell me when I'm wrong.
Exactly. It's nice. It sparks conversation. None of us are right. We all think we are, but we actually aren't. And so when we are right, we get to claim it. That's the biggest thing. I think one of my biggest, football wins or football loss in my career was I used to cover the University of Oregon, for Sports Illustrated. And I wrote a piece that I thought Justin Herbert was going to be a bust, And I here's the thing. I had to back it up. Didn't see him get better 4 years, yada, yada, yada. And when he was drafted, I said that I think he's going to, get his GM and coach fired. Well, I like to call it a win because I was right. He technically got his GM and coach fired. Granted, it was because he was too good, but still, that's besides the point. Logistics, right?
Right.
That's my thing. I mean, I love football. I think this is great. People are going to tell us that we're right, we're wrong. They're going to agree, they're going to disagree, and it sparks conversation. And I think it's a fun platform, and let's have fun with it. And
you like to mix it up I've seen you mix it up already a little bit on social media. You're not afraid to get in there in the weeds, get in there with the reply guys, get up there and not afraid.
It's fun. And the thing is, like, it never needs to become personal, it never becomes malicious or anything like that. But it's fun to joke around and get after people and talk about it. And like specifically, like, that was the Oregon-Washington rivalry. So that's always a good time to talk about. But it's just I enjoy doing that, and as long as it never crosses that line, you could say. But it's enjoyable, and like that you spark the conversation, it just sparks debate, and I think what we could use more of is like a healthy debate. Learn how to debate healthy, and agree to disagree. Sure. So yeah. Well, for the record, I wasn't wrong on that social media. Just want to throw that out there.
Which one? Go study up. Get your picks for next week, Ryan, because I'm going to start studying up right away. I hope McCaffrey is feeling better for you soon, and we'll talk to you then.
Sounds good. Can't wait.
Fantasy football is one thing. Real football is another. There was a game Thursday night. Buffalo wins handily over Miami. Big story out of that game, though. Tua Tagovailoa, another concussion, suffered in that game. That's his third diagnosed concussion in the NFL, and he had one with Alabama in 2019 as well. Got to wonder where his career is at this point with so many concussions, so many problems with that. This is a story bigger than football. This is a story about the rest of his life. So it's just, you hate to see it. You watch the play and you're like, he's just down, and you can tell right away something bad has happened. The worst part of the game, as Josh Allen said, the opposing quarterback for Buffalo, couldn't agree more. We'll see how Tua kind of comes out of this, and if he's ever able to kind of shed this, and B, if he really considers playing again, or if he has to say at some point, you know what, that's too many. I'm risking future problems down the road if I keep playing this game and keep suffering more and more concussions. It's a huge weekend in Minnesota sports. Let's finish with the cooler and talk about that a little bit. Vikings against the 49ers. They're pretty significant underdogs. Maybe the sporting betting public not as impressed with the Giants win as some of us were. They're almost a touchdown underdog against San Francisco. Maybe that's just a a nod to how good San Francisco is, though. They looked awfully good in routing the Jets and quarterback Aaron Rodgers on Monday Night Football last week. So that is the home opener for the Vikings, so they've got a chance there with the home crowd. Big news, though. Jordan Addison hasn't practiced Wednesday or Thursday. He came out of Sunday's game with that ankle injury. If he can't go, you're already down TJ Hawkinson because of recovery from last year's injury still. Their pass-catching options are going to be pretty limited. That spells some problems as far as I'm concerned because Justin Jefferson's going to get tons of attention. And then from there, you got to depend on secondary playmakers who have less experience. Jalen Naylor looks like he's a full go for this game, so that's good. Aaron Jones out of the backfield, and yeah, they've got other pass catchers out of tight end, Josh Oliver, guys like that, but not the dynamic offense they're hoping for when Addison and Hawkinson are fully healthy. That could be a problem for Sam Darnold. The defense, I feel like, will be in better shape for the Vikings, but again, you're dealing with an offense. You're going against an offense that's awfully good, even if Christian McCaffrey can't end up playing. Harrison Smith hasn't practiced this week, so you got to wonder about that. Andrew Van Ginkel, the hero of last week, was limited in practice Thursday, but it sounds like he should be a good to go. So their best hope in that game is probably keep it close, keep it low scoring, and try to win it in the end. Lynx, on the other hand, have a big game tonight against Chicago. Huge game Sunday in New York against the Liberty, which leads into a Tuesday game at Connecticut, which could very well determine whether they are the 2 or the 3 seed in the WNBA playoffs. That, of course, has implications because it could end up determining whether you play Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever in the first round or not. So, big weekend for the Lynx. I've already talked about the Twins a little bit, but they have a series starting tonight against the Reds. Opportunity to gain more ground. Reds are not a bad team, but they're a little under 500, pretty much out of the playoff race in the National League. So, an opportunity again for the Twins to stabilize, do some damage, and make sure they're going into this big 7-game road trip against Cleveland and Boston with momentum and a cushion in the playoff race. That will do it for me today. Royce should be with me on Monday to break down all of these things I was just previewing. Until then, I am Michael Rand. Enjoy your weekend. Back at it again on Monday.